Black CEO refuses to leave first class. 30 minutes later, the plane descends into chaos. The airport is bustling on a clear morning. The electronic board reads, Flight 872 to New York, boarding at Gate 14, departure at 10:30 a.m. Marcus Johnson, a black man in his 40s, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, walks with confident strides down the gate corridor. He carries a small carry-on suitcase and a slim laptop. His expression is calm but resolute. Someone used to be in control. He stops in line for first-class boarding. Around him, passengers are organizing their belongings, speaking in hushed tones. The atmosphere carries a sense of anticipation. A few quick glances at Marcus, but nothing overt. An airline employee, wearing a white shirt and a badge, approaches him discreetly. "Mr. Johnson?" he asks. "Yes, that's me," Marcus replies, looking at the document handed to him. "There's been an issue with the first-class reservation. We're overbooked. Your ticket is confirmed, but there's no seat for you in first class. You'll have to fly economy." The employee's voice is professional, but there's a hint of discomfort. Marcus remains composed. His eyes narrow for a brief moment, but his posture doesn't waver. "That's not acceptable. My reservation was made and confirmed in advance. Please double-check." He speaks firmly, but without raising his voice. The employee checks the system on his tablet, then shakes his head. "I'm sorry, sir. The situation is out of our hands. The flight is full, and we need to accommodate another passenger in first class. The airline will do its best to compensate you." He avoids direct eye contact. Marcus takes a deep breath, nods, and proceeds to board the plane. As he walks down the aisle leading to first class, a flight attendant with a serious expression stops him. "Sir, I need to speak with you before you take your seat," she says with a professional tone. They step aside to talk in private. She explains that his seat was given to another important passenger and that he will need to be seated in economy. Marcus listens intently, his gaze steady, taking in the information without agreeing to it. He responds firmly, "This is my seat. I'm not giving it up without a valid reason. I'd like you to check my reservation again." The flight attendant, with an expression that mixes discomfort and hesitation, says she'll do what she can, but asks for his understanding, as the airline has its policies. Marcus shakes his head, unconvinced, and heads toward his seat. The plane is ready for takeoff, passengers seated. But for Marcus, the atmosphere is no longer the same. As soon as Marcus finally settles into his first-class seat, he leans back slightly, fastens a seatbelt, and pulls his laptop from his bag to prepare for the upcoming meeting. The cabin is quiet, with only the distant hum of the plane's engines and the soft murmuring of passengers. But the calm is broken when the same flight attendant who spoke with him in the aisle approaches with firm steps, her eyes serious and her expression tense. "Mr. Johnson, I need to speak with you again," she says, lowering her voice so no one else can hear. Marcus closes a laptop and looks at her calmly, already sensing that something more serious is coming. "What's the matter?" he asks, his tone firm but polite. The flight attendant takes a deep breath and begins to explain. There's been an unexpected issue with the flight. An important passenger, who also holds a first-class ticket, is still waiting at the gate. Since the flight is full, the company has asked me to request that you give up your seat in first class and move to economy. Marcus raises an eyebrow, surprised, but his face shows no sign of irritation. He responds, "And this important passenger? You do realize that everyone bought their ticket under the same terms, right? I see no reason why I should lose my seat for him." "I understand, sir." The flight attendant tries to stay composed, but this is a company decision. You would be relocated to economy and, of course, receive proper compensation. Marcus locks eyes with the flight attendant and replies firmly, "I'm not giving up my seat." She takes a deep breath and walks away to speak with the head flight attendant. Meanwhile, some passengers begin to notice the commotion, exchanging curious looks, and the atmosphere in the cabin starts to grow tense. A few minutes later, the head flight attendant approaches. He is a white man in his 50s, with a stern expression. He speaks directly to Marcus, without beating around the bush. "Mr. Johnson, I understand your position, but you must understand that the company is facing a serious issue. A high-priority passenger for the airline needs to take your seat. If you cooperate and agree to the change, you will receive financial compensation. Marcus shakes his head with mild disapproval. And what kind of compensation is that? He asks, his voice firm but controlled. $10,000, replies the head flight attendant. An awkward silence hangs in the air. Some passengers whisper among themselves. Others watch closely. A few eyes fix on Marcus, as if he were the one holding up the flight. Marcus declines with an expression that mixes firmness and sorrow. Money doesn't buy dignity. The head flight attendant tightens his lips, visibly uncomfortable, and walks away to speak with the crew. The flight attendant returns to Marcus, trying once more to convince him. Please, sir, this is a company decision. We need you to move to economy so we can proceed with the flight. And what if I refuse? Marcus asks, staring straight at her. The flight attendant hesitates, the tension on her face growing. If you refuse, I'll have to call airport security, she says quietly. Marcus inhales deeply. I'm not leaving my seat. At that moment, the cabin begins to divide. Passengers around him start murmuring complaints, some voices rising in impatience. This is ridiculous. We're all delayed because of him. He's holding up the flight. Marcus looks at them calmly and responds loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm not the reason for the delay, and I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm demanding respect for my rights. The passengers murmur and begin looking at each other, restless. The flight attendant returns to the intercom and makes an announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to inform you that the flight is delayed due to the refusal of the passenger identified as a man in the black schedule to give up his seat. We ask for your understanding. Marcus's expression hardens. He calmly stands, walks to the intercom, and intervenes. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you stop this implicit discrimination. My name is Marcus Johnson. I have a right to my seat. This isn't about me holding up the flight. It's about a system trying to diminish me because of the color of my skin. A tense silence follows. Some people turn to look at him. Others looked away. At that moment, a nearby passenger, a middle-aged white man, raises his voice. You're holding up everyone's flight out of pride. That's not fair. Marcus responds calmly. Pride? No. Respect. You're in a hurry. So am I. But that hurry doesn't justify injustice. The mood turns heavy. The flight attendant announces once again that she will call the police to remove Marcus from the flight. Marcus sits down, pulls out his phone, and begins recording, saying, You're witnessing a clear example of institutional racism live inside this aircraft. The cabin splits between those who support him and those who side with the airline. Marcus remains steadfast, even feeling the weight of judgment and the oppressive silence surrounding him. The battle for justice in that small space would not end there. The atmosphere in first class is heavy with tension. Marcus remains seated, his expression calm, but his eyes are alert to everything around him. The uncomfortable silence is broken by murmurs and glances that shift from curious to suspicious, disapproving to sympathetic. The weight of the situation seems to fill the space. Some passengers exchange quiet remarks, a few casting judgmental looks, others visibly uneasy about how Marcus is being treated. Outside, the announcement that the flight will not depart until the issue is resolved echoes through the cabin. Marcus mentally reviews his messages and appointment for the day, but his attention is fully focused on what's unfolding around him. The crew returns to his side, this time with a flight manager, a man who exudes authority, though he's clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Johnson, the manager begins, trying to maintain a professional tone. The airline understands your position and values you as a customer. That's why we'd like to offer you financial compensation if you agree to move to economy class. It's $10,000 in cash, plus a voucher for future flights and upgrades. The manager holds a folder that appears to contain the official offer. He extends his hand, expecting Marcus to accept it. Marcus looks at the manager with a mixture of surprise and disdain. His words come out firm but not aggressive. $10,000? He repeats with a bitter smile. What do you think this means? That my seat has monetary value, but my dignity does not? That if I have money, the issue is resolved? But what if the problem isn't financial? He pauses, looking the manager directly in the eyes, then glancing at the passengers, watching them. I won't surrender to what's wrong just for money. You're trying to buy my submission, my acceptance of injustice, like it's merchandise. I'm not a product to be sold or bought. Some passengers whisper, some avert their gaze. Others, more attentive, begin to realize this isn't just a seating issue. The manager makes a conciliatory gesture. I understand your position, Mr. Johnson, but I ask that you consider the impact on all the passengers. This delay is affecting all of us. If you cooperate, we'll ensure your next travel experience is even better. Please think about it. Marcus responds, voice steady, making it clear his decision is final. My seat is not negotiable. Justice isn't something you buy or trade for money. At this point, tension in the cabin escalates. Some passengers begin to voice their opinions, some in support, others in frustration. An older woman nearby raises her voice, showing impatience. Sir, we're all tired of waiting. It's not fair to delay the flight over this. A young man seated in front speaks up. This is racism, plain and simple. He has the right to be here. We're all stuck because an airline is trying to force him out. The flight attendant, trying to manage the situation, announces again that if the issue isn't resolved, the police will be called. Marcus, now recorded with his phone, addresses the passengers once more. I'm here defending a right. Maybe some of you don't understand that, but my fight isn't just mine. It's for everyone who's ever been treated unfairly. I won't back down. A small group begins clapping quietly. Others start watching more intently, some even with admiration. Outside the plane, the voices of the ground crew can be heard, worried and tense. The aircraft's captain contacts the crew, asking for an update on the situation. Meanwhile, Marcus remains calm, looking out the window, reflecting on how many times in life he's had to prove he was more than the stereotype others wanted to place on him. The flight attendant returns once more, now with a serious expression. Mr. Johnson, I need to inform you that the police have been called to help resolve this matter. Marcus raises his phone, starts a live stream on social media, and speaks in a strong, clear, and steady voice. What you're witnessing is institutional racism, live. What you see here is a black man being pressured to give up a right he has. Not because he's wrong, but because he makes others uncomfortable. This is a reality for many people out there. The cabin is divided. Some turn away uneasy. Others watch in admiration, inspired by the courage of this man. The flight manager takes a deep breath, visibly tense. He knows the situation could soon become a public controversy. Despite the pressure, Marcus holds on to his dignity. He doesn't know what's coming next, but he knows he will not give up what is his. Not for money and not out of fear. The flight attendant's announcement echoes through the airplane cabin with unexpected gravity. The police will be called to resolve the situation involving Marcus Johnson. The previously tense atmosphere shifts into a heavy silence, broken only by whispers and uneasy glances. Some passengers begin whispering quietly among themselves, while others stare directly at Marcus, their eyes filled with judgment, curiosity, or even sympathy. The division in the cabin becomes more visible with each passing moment. In a nearby row, a white woman in her 50s exhales deeply and murmurs to her companion. This is getting out of control. He's holding up the entire flight. A young man beside her replies, but it's his right. The airline is trying to force him out of his own seat, and that's wrong. Meanwhile, a couple in the back of the cabin turns to the flight attendant and asks impatiently, how much longer is this going to take? We have important appointments. The flight attendant, visibly worn down, tries to maintain her composure. We're doing everything we can to resolve this as quickly as possible. Please be patient. At the center of the turmoil, Marcus remains seated, his posture firm and imposing. He watches the faces around him, feeling the weight of every judgmental glance and curious stare. To some, he is a disruption. To others, a symbol of resistance. He slowly rises to his feet and, with a steady voice, never raising his tone, addresses the cabin. I know the wait is hard for everyone, but what's happening here is more than a delay. It's a matter of justice. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm demanding respect for a legitimate right. Some passengers look at him with surprise. Others fall silent, perhaps reflecting on the situation. At that moment, an older man sitting by the window raises his hand and says in a measured voice, "Mr. Johnson, I don't know you, but I admire your courage. I believe justice must prevail." A quiet murmur of support begins to ripple through the cabin. A few passengers start clapping softly. Others nod in agreement. But not everyone is on his side. A woman seated beside him raises her voice. "This isn't fair. We all paid to reach our destination. He's holding us all up over wounded pride." The debate starts to intensify, with voices divided between support and frustration. Suddenly, the flight attendant returns, now accompanied by two uniformed police officers entering to the rear of the plane. A heavy silence falls over the cabin as everyone watches the scene unfold. The officers approach Marcus, who remains calm. One of them speaks. "Sir, we need you to vacate the seat so the flight can proceed." Marcus looks at the officers and responds in a clear voice, "I will not give up my seat. I have a valid ticket, and this situation is unjust." The officers exchange brief, discreet glances as they assess the tension in the cabin. One of them turns to the flight attendant. "We need to understand all the facts before taking action." Meanwhile, Marcus takes the opportunity to address the passengers directly. "If you feel inconvenienced, I ask you to think about what's really happening here. This isn't about a delay. It's about a system trying to remove me from my place simply because of who I am." The pilot speaks over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask for your calm and cooperation. We are working to resolve the situation in the best way possible." The cabin remains divided, some passengers visibly uncomfortable, others clearly supporting Marcus. In an unexpected gesture, one of the officers steps closer to Marcus and says quietly, "Sir, please come with us so we can clarify the situation." Marcus looks at the officer, hesitates for a moment, then decides to follow. As he rises, he casts a firm look at the other passengers, as if silently sending a message that the fight for justice doesn't end here. His walk toward the exit is accompanied by curious stares and heavy silence. Upon reaching the gate, the conversation between Marcus and the officers continues. While inside the cabin, passengers remain uneasy about what will unfold next. This moment marks an escalation of the conflict, where the issue of injustice confronts bureaucracy and institutional prejudice, and where the courage of a black man challenges the system to defend his rights. Marcus's footsteps echo firmly down the narrow aisle of the plane as he walks alongside the two police officers toward the cabin exit. The passengers' eyes follow his every move, the tension in the air almost tangible. Whispers and glances mix, surprise, solidarity, and doubt. It's a defining moment, not just for Marcus, but for everyone witnessing the situation. As they reach the airplane door, one of the officers, the older one with a stern expression, pauses briefly, turns to Marcus, and asks in a respectful tone, "Mr. Johnson, before we take any further action, could you explain exactly what's going on?" Marcus takes a deep breath, maintains his composure, and begins to explain the situation clearly and firmly. "I was asked by the crew to give up my seat in first class for another passenger. I was informed that the airline would offer financial compensation if I agreed. I refused because doing so would mean giving up a right that is mine. The crew then announced to the entire plane that I was refusing to leave, delaying the flight, and threatened to call the police to have me removed. That is the situation." The officers exchange quick glances, and the younger one, after listening, mutters quietly to his colleague. It seems he's being treated unfairly, not just because of the request, but because of how it's being handled. The older officer turns to Marcus and says, "Mr. Johnson, we don't have the authority to force you off the plane if you have a valid ticket. Our role is to ensure order and safety. We'll speak to the airline and check whether there's been any mistake." Meanwhile, back inside the plane, the crew is visibly tense. The flight manager speaks into a radio with a worried tone, explaining the situation and asking for instructions from headquarters. Outside, Marcus waits patiently, fully aware that this moment may define something much greater than a simple seat dispute. Suddenly, the plane door opens and the flight manager appears, accompanied by a legal representative from the airline, A man in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression serious. The representative addresses the officers and Marcus. Mr. Johnson, we understand your position and acknowledge that you have the right to your seat in first class. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and assure you this will not happen again. Marcus watches a man closely, showing no emotion other than steady resolve. I appreciate the acknowledgement, he replies, but this isn't just about my seat. It's about the way we're treated. Respect must be given to everyone, no matter who they are. The representative nods, clearly uncomfortable, and gestures to the crew to reopen the airplane door. The police officers step aside, indicating that there's no longer a need for their involvement. The flight attendant, now visibly relieved, invites Marcus to return to his seat. Back inside the cabin, Marcus returns to his place. The silence slowly gives way to scattered applause, and a few passengers rise to greet him with words of support and thanks. As the plane begins to taxi toward the runway, Marcus looks around the cabin, now filled with respectful glances and quiet smiles. He knows he's won an important battle, not just for himself, but for everyone who has ever been treated unjustly. The captain announces over the intercom, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. The flight is now cleared for departure, and we hope to provide you with a smooth journey." As the plane rises into the sky, Marcus reflects on the power of dignity and courage. What began as a simple airline ticket had turned into a fight for respect and equality, and he was determined to carry that fight forward wherever it might lead. As soon as the plane reaches cruising altitude, the cabin becomes a space of reflection and renewed energy. The flight, which had begun marked by tension and injustice, now pulses with a different atmosphere. Marcus sits in his first-class seat, but his mind is far from there. He's thinking about what just happened and the ripple effect his actions might generate. Little by little, passengers who were once tense or impatient begin to approach him. An elderly woman with gray hair sits beside him and, with a gentle smile, says, "Mr. Johnson, I want to thank you. You showed us that it's possible to stand up to injustice without losing your composure or dignity." Another passenger, a young executive, approaches quietly. "I was shocked by the way you were treated. Thank you for helping us see it. It's a lesson for all of us." Marcus replies with a modest smile, feeling the support around him, and also the weight of responsibility. Meanwhile, his live stream on social media is already gaining traction. Comments, shares, and messages of solidarity are pouring in. People who had never heard him before are beginning to recognize his name and his cause. But it's not all simple. Shortly after, Marcus receives a message from his company's legal department. The news isn't good. The incident on the flight may have consequences, especially given the public attention. He takes a deep breath, understanding that the fight for justice is rarely easy, and that the cost is often far from comfortable. During the flight, Marcus begins to reflect on the many layers of that moment. It wasn't just about him, but about everyone who, in different contexts, is asked to give up their rights for someone else's convenience. He recalls the times, since he was young, when he faced both small and large challenges because of his skin color, his background, or simply for being a black man in traditionally closed spaces. But in that moment, in that airplane cabin, he had done more than resist. He had given voice to an issue that is often hidden, masked by silence and omission. The passengers around him also begin to talk among themselves, discussing what they witnessed. Many admit they wouldn't have known how to act in a similar situation, and that Marcus's resolve inspired reflection on their own biases and behaviors. On social media, a local digital influencer shares Marcus's video and comments. "This is the kind of courage the world needs. Bravo, Marcus. May your story inspire more people to stop accepting injustice in silence." As the plane begins to descend, Marcus thinks about what comes next. Interviews, debates, inevitable media attention, and above all, the opportunity to turn that experience into an example. He knows the fight for equality and respect is long, but he feels that this moment was a small victory, a cornerstone for real change. As he steps onto solid ground, he already feels the weight of stares, cameras, and questions. But he's ready, because now more than ever, Marcus Johnson knows his voice is needed, and the flight he refused to leave was only the beginning of a much greater journey.